Every day when we're on the road, people around us endanger themselves and others by using their phones while driving. They think they're hiding it, but we've all seen them and know exactly who they are. For instance, there's a sneak-a-peeker who darts their eyes between the road and their text. There's also the got a ticketer, looking upset because they just got a ticket for using their phone while driving. And what about the fast scroller who can't drive 5 minutes without updating their social media feeds? Or the night lighter who has that mysterious glow illuminating the inside of their car after dark. Do any of these sound familiar? If they remind you of yourself or someone you know, rethink your behavior before you find yourself becoming the fender benderer, the veering off the roader, or worst of all, the driver who killed someone. Put the phone away or pay. Paid for by NHTSA.
Fishing like a local isn't just about catching fish. It's about connecting with the environment and the people who call it home. It's about hearing the stories and traditions that have been passed down for generations and sharing unforgettable moments with the people you meet along the way. Fishing like a local is having an experience that stays with you forever. And with Fishing Booker, you can experience it too, no matter where you are. Discover your next adventure on Fishing Booker.
Hello and welcome to the Publicly Challenged Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Oswald, and I hope you join me on my quest for knowledge to become a better public land hunter, angler, and forager. Stick with this and who knows, maybe we will learn something together. All right, so I'm sitting here and I am talking to Kris Chain. So Kris, would you go ahead and introduce yourself for everybody listening?
Hey there, I'm Kris Chain, relatively adult onset hunter, but really kind of discovered a love of food in the last probably 5 to 10 years, and it slowly brought me from gardening back into the mountains and getting wild game and just exploring every avenue possible.
So on this podcast, we like adult so-called onset hunters, but it's such a dirty word saying that. It sounds like a disease, something just gross, you know, something that could have brought on by better eating or whatever. So,
all right.
But anyway, let's kind of talk about your story, your journey a little bit then. I mean, so you say gardening, what kind of gardening were you doing? What was it looking like? What kind of led you further to the passion of food through gardening? And then we'll kind of talk about a transition into the outdoors.
Yeah. So, I grew up, like I'm sure a lot of your listeners, with some awesome parents that had a really big garden. We did the purple hull peas, and I remember getting stained fingers when it was that season, and, doing tomatoes, peppers, strawberries, you name it. And, I moved around, did some, the professional thing, working in a lab for a few years, and that kept me in an urban environment where I didn't have access to that. But then we moved out to Charlottesville, and it's just such an awesome location nestled in the mountains. And we got a yard, and we started actually growing the simple stuff again, peppers and tomatoes. And, my background is I'm a molecular genetic researcher and now a classroom teacher. And so, my depth of expertise is in chemistry, and ironically, that was the hardest thing for me to teach. I knew it at a level that was just really hard for me. I mean, I would start waxing poetically about the periodic table, and it just watched the kids glaze over. And so I quickly discovered, I need to tell this through food, and that was a blind spot I had. And so at the same time that we had this nice garden space, and I was trying to challenge myself to learn and teach chemistry through food. It all kind of came together, and then at the right time, getting back into hunting. I hadn't gone since I was a little kid in Colorado, like 20 years off, and then picking up hunting in the middle of that really rounded it all out.
So let's kind of get into the gardening. I'm curious just to see what everybody does these days. Was it like a big permaculture type garden to where everything was kind of designed to flow with the space and, a food forest, or was it your traditional like Liberty garden, no-till garden? What kind of stuff were you doing?
So no, that's a great question. We don't have a huge yard, but we have enough to where we can try a few different spots. And so the first one was very much what you'd probably call Liberty Garden, and then we're in Virginia, so we have a lot of sloped hills, and so always trying to keep runoff in mind, so where you conserve water, and it's just constantly evolving. So it started off really simple. I mean, even before that, we probably had a planter with some tomatoes that worked. We got one of those topsy turvies way back in the day, but we started with that garden. It was really good. Then we realized it'd probably be a good idea to get the food away from where the dogs hang out for obvious reasons, and then we discovered this plot on the side of the house that we had normally just kind of neglected, and then I cleared it out one winter, and we've been expanding it ever since, incorporating rain barrels, and this year we're doing corn, celery, spinach, lettuce, kale, many different types of peppers, many different types of tomatoes, some leeks, broccoli, a little bit of everything. I find that I like a good, healthy mix of vegetables, because if I buy them from the store, chances are I don't use them, and they aren't front of mind. But if they're growing there and I'm taking care of them, it pushes me to include them in a dish more.
Nice. Very nice. Okay. So we covered that. So let's talk about this transition to food, to hunting. How did that come about? How did that happen? What was the catalyst there? Was it, COVID and meat shortages? Was it before that? What was the driving force?
It was great fortune, to put it simply. I have a good friend who encouraged me to come and hunt on his property, and it was one of those things. Like I said, I did it as a kid in Colorado, and then hadn't thought about it for probably 20 years, and then started hiking out here in Virginia again, getting out in the mountains, seeing wildlife. Oh, that would actually be kind of fun. And then that offer came along at the right time. And it was a few years before COVID. So I've been seriously hunting for about 5 years now. And pretty much, aside from the occasional brisket for a 4th of July or something like that, it's all wild game. And so I'm fortunate enough to be able to have the time and ability to go, live that lifestyle. But having that offer and just having a spot that was relatively unpressured, to where I could learn the ecosystem, how the deer behave, that just dove me even deeper in. And, I started with the hand-me-down 30-30, which was great. Upgraded to, just a simple 308, nothing flashy. And then once I started bow hunting about 3 years ago, the addiction intensified, and just getting that much closer and calling the animals, and then seeing what they eat and trying to incorporate that on the plate, stuff like that.
Yeah.
It really lets you go deep.
Nice. So when you were hunting as a child, were you big game hunting then, or was it more small game type stuff?
As a kid, it was small game, but I accompanied my dad in the Colorado mountains on some deer hunts. And so, looking back, I was 6 or 7. So what felt like an awesome time in my memory, I mean, who knows, probably is just run of the mill hike through the mountains, but I remember that as being these awesome trips where we'd go out for extended periods of time. And, there's one time where a snowstorm came in and the hunt was not happening at all. We were about to go, and we started a fire on the top of a cliff. I mean, when you're 7 years old in Colorado, starting a fire in the backcountry, it's kind of like your apex.
Yeah, for sure. So then your friend kept inviting you. You started deer hunting, I assume, on his property?
Yes.
With the rifle. And then was there small game involved then too, or what was the primary focus?
Was primarily deer. I haven't really gotten back into small game per se. I'm starting duck hunting. I went once or twice in high school, but I'm starting to focus on goose and duck. But initially that was just deer. And then this past fall, I was lucky enough to get a black bear. And so now I'm thinking my thoughts are dominated with deer and black bear.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to throw some squirrels into that mix.
I should do that more. They are starting to kill my garden, so I think I might buy a thumper or two, and and take care of that problem this summer.
Awesome. So, foraging. Do you do a whole lot of that, or where did that kind of start, and what do you look for?
Yeah, so I think a lot of these answers is probably going to go starting back in childhood, because in Colorado there wasn't that much, but I do remember around where we were. I do specifically remember some people taking advantage of prickly pear and making jelly out of the prickly pear cactus, and so that was front of mind from a little kid. But then we moved to Louisiana, and I mean, you have so much growing in the bayou down there. There's mushrooms, muscadines. Sometimes you can find a wild satsuma. It's pretty rare. It's usually in somebody's garden. There's just so much down there that people regularly put on their plate. And then when you move out of the South and you start having those conversations, people look at you strange, like you're going into the bayou and collecting mushrooms. And so, yeah, they're oyster mushrooms or the things you buy at the store. What are you talking about?
I got to ask you, the satsuma, as you said, are you referring to like a thistle?
No,
because I know like Cajuns tend to eat a lot of thistle, and they talk about it how it's kind of like a cucumber, which I guess it kind of does taste like that in a way, like a bull thistle or something.
No, it's more like a citrus.
Oh,
it's like
okay.
it's a miniature orange kind of.
Okay.
It's kind of like a blood orange is a version of an orange. It's a sidestep in flavor a little bit.
All right. So did you eat any thistle when you lived there?
No. I was racking my brain. I don't think I've ever had. No.
Okay. Cool. So then now you're living in Virginia. Has the foraging kind of happened there, or is it something that's kind of gone to the back burner for now?
No, certainly it's kind of pushed forward. So, this last year I had a friend come up from Louisiana and come deer hunting, and it's one of those very powerful experiences where we had fresh tenderloin at deer camp. We had fresh tenderloin. If you pointed that way and then turn 45 degrees and point that way, were the chicken in the woods mushrooms that we found, and pairing those in one meal, over an open fire. That was an incredible experience. Right around the time that I was starting to wonder, do I add foraging into season report? And so that couldn't have happened at a better time. But this, we found lion's mane, a lot of mushrooms around here. And then this area is full of, blackberries and raspberries in the summertime.
Awesome. So let's talk about season report. What is it?
Put simply, it is the hunter's almanac. If you go in the woods and get your food with your hands, or you tend your own garden, it is the almanac that tells you with location specificity what you can do, when, where, how. And it started as a way to solve my own problem. As anybody who hunts in multiple locations will tell you, they have all these regulations and different dates, and you can do this date and stuff like that. And I set out making my own personal cheat sheet, and then realized I had a coding project that was a lot of the code would lend itself well. And I hopped it over, and then I started slowly building in the country. I started with about 5 states and shared it with some friends. I was like, is this something you would use? Like, is this useful? And every single person responded like, holy crap, how's this not been made yet? Something that you can search the whole nation, or even across, at that point, it was just a few states, but you can search across the whole state's regulatory system and find an answer way quicker than you could Google it. And so, it's just been steady building all through COVID.
So does it use like a search engine through like optimization for certain keywords, or what is it? Does it have compiled data, or is it actually actively searching for the data?
It's a little bit of a mix, without getting too deep into it. It's it's a mix, and it's a lot of code I wrote. Well, all of it's code I wrote. So it pulls from several different sources and translates everything into one format.
Okay. So say somebody wants to look at it or wants to know something. What do they do? Where do they go? How do they do it?
So currently you go to seasonreport.com, and right away, within seconds, you can get you signed up, and you just input your email and create a password for a return user. You get a free 2-week trial, because I don't want people to feel that they misunderstood anything during the trial phase. I played around with a 24-hour trial, but I think 2 weeks is an appropriate amount of time for you to realize like you can kind of shape your dinner plans with this service. And then at that point, it's $15 a year, and it's just it's kind of like a pantry and dinner table organization and data service.
So if somebody pays the $15, what is it, like a reoccurring charge, or what happens as far as that goes?
Yeah, I have it set to where it's you get notified, and then it's a re-up.
Okay.
After a year. Yeah.
So let's kind of talk about the categories and how they work as far as people and what they can actually do with it.
Yeah. So I my whole goal with this was, once it moved out of a personal project and something I was making for family and friends, is I wanted the stuff that you would normally Google, when to plant or when is deer season for this location. And then you have to click through and then go through, a few paragraphs of introductory content and ads and all that. I wanted to do away with all that. And my goal is to get you the information you're actually trying to recall quickly, as fast as possible. And so you can either, when you create your account, you have a personal dashboard that saves all of the stuff that you actually care about. But to populate that dashboard, there's a search function that you can go to. And right off the bat, it just says, what 4 options are you trying to look for? Hunt, fish, forage, or garden. And then it's a drop down for state. And then it's a drop down for county or game management zone or something like that.
Okay. So earlier I was on a little bit. I was playing around. And so, like, say I've got 4 days in October and I want to go somewhere and archery hunt turkeys in the fall. Can you search like broad spectrum of that, or is it only state specific for each category?
No, you nailed the other half of the kind of exploratory. So you have your personal dashboard, you have search, like I just told you, but then another tab I created is discover. And you can do just that. You can put in any query you want, and it will return all the results that satisfy that with as much or as little information as you want.
So let's say like I want to find like Virginia bluebells or something like that and eat them. What would I do?
Bluebells I do not have in there. But, so it is an ever-growing database. But I take feedback like that and I'm like, all right, I've had 2 or 3 people mention that. I should probably put that in there. But you would go to the search, and so you'd go, I want to forage in the state of Virginia, drop in your county, and it'll tell you all options for forageable foods there. And if it's the food that you want, you can save it. And then when you log in, instantly on your first login screen will be all that saved food information.
So let's say Virginia bluebells or something like that. And in Illinois, it's going to tell you options as far as what, like where you can go get them, or how does that work?
So it is primarily delivering dates and tips and links. And so, I find that I was always discovering or hearing about something after a friend had just told me, oh yeah, but you missed it. It was like last week. And so, morel mushrooms are a perfect example of that. And so when you search, it will return, a calendar of when you can expect to find that forageable food. And then you can click on that calendar. It's a little interactive. It pops up, just quickly the calendar dates, if you prefer to read that format, or some general tips. This is really helpful when it comes to the gardening part, where I have sowing seeds, transplanting, growth phase, and expected harvest times. And for each of those critical periods in a plant's growth, I have some tips that are specific to, that time of the plant's life, like don't overwater or pay attention for fungus or, whatever is pertinent to the plant. And all of that is location specific. So I have you go into the field in the right time in Florida versus Illinois.
Okay. So let's kind of go with the foraging topic again and kind of dive even deeper into it. Is there a certain number of species of things as far as fungi or different plants that are out there that you have, or is it something that's searchable through the database and I'll still pull stuff up?
Oh, no, it's at this point, it is stuff that I've input into the database. Yeah.
Okay. So do we have an exact number? I'm just kind of curious.
If you give me a second, I can pull it up. But, ballparking it, it's for forageables. I'd say it's close to 40 or 50 options.
Okay.
Somewhere in that range nationwide. And so a southeastern state might provide more versus a northwestern, stuff like that.
Okay. Or a southwestern might have prickly pear, for example, when to
Exactly.
pick and make whatever you're going to make out of it and stuff like that. And then possibly recipes or something pop up too. How's that work?
That is definitely something in the works.
Okay. All right. So
you can see where we're going with this.
So out of the species of mushrooms or whatever, or some of the inputs that you've put in, what are some of the things that you found that you were like, oh, wow, like I didn't even know this existed until I heard about it, or something like that you've kind of found or come across?
I would say just about, I don't want to say everything with the foraging, but I didn't realize how naive I was. I don't think I was cocky or anything, but I didn't think I was lacking so much knowledge in what is out there. I knew there's mushrooms and berries and ramps and stuff like that, but then you get into like the pawpaw, the local fruit, the North American native, all the different types of mushrooms that are edible, which I have reserved to only put in stuff that feels very hard to misidentify. I don't want to lead people astray. I have some identification tips and links to experts, but I don't want to be flirting with any serious danger on something like that. And so morels, oysters, chicken of the woods, lion's manes, things like that.
The Safe 7.
But what's that?
The Safe 7, would you say?
Yeah, stuff like that.
Which is actually a book, The Safe 7 by Stan Tequila. It's an awesome book for beginners to look at. It's very, very helpful. Another one that is amazing in the compilation of data that is just put through from this book is All That the Rain Brings. And that one, I can't remember who wrote it. Very creepy looking cover. Definitely somebody you wouldn't want watching your kids. The guy's standing there in almost like a Dumb and Dumber tuxedo, but like traditional colors. And I don't know if it's raining or wet or not. I don't remember. And he's standing there holding like a trumpet and skulking. Very creepy looking, wild, crazy hair everywhere.
It makes me feel good about the meal I'm going to put on my table.
But nonetheless, the book is super, super informative and actually breaks it down into, there's graphs. So now you can identify, at least by distinguishing features and spore prints or identifying features, what family it's in, at least, so you can get closer to identifying something that you're unsure of or unfamiliar with. It's really, really interesting. And I'm talking like hundreds of species within this. It's a pretty cool book. Some of the other ones, like if you want to start getting into boletes, which are good, but also insane, the amount of different boletes within that family. But then you get into books like the North American something or other. I'm drawing a blank here. Something North American Guide to Boletes. But it's textbook. It's actually textbook.
Okay.
But it's great. That's a good one too.
You gave me some good reading
Eastern. Actually, you know what? It is Eastern North American.
I'm Will Cooper, host of HuntStand's Make Your Mark podcast. If you haven't already, Download the free Waypoint TV app to listen to our podcast and watch the original films from Hunt Stand Presents anywhere, anytime, and on any device.
Boletes of Eastern North America. And then I think there's actually a Boletes of North America, and those are by Alan Bassett. Those are excellent books to get into. And that's just mushrooms, right? So then you get into foraging. And then, so like, for instance, hostas. Did you know that hostas are actually edible?
I did not.
All varieties. And
really,
over in Asia, they are actually sold in markets as food. But it's not the best time to eat them when they are actually fully unfurled, and it becomes that big broad leaf, because at that point it's very fibrous and a little bit tough. You could still do it if you chopped it up finely and then sauteed it. But when the shoots first pop out of the ground, before they unfurl, they're edible and tender.
Really?
Yeah. So, and technically that's not really foraging because it's a domesticated somewhat of a house plant or landscape, right? But
yeah,
all of these things are pretty cool that you can do. And a great book for that is The Backyard Forager. I believe it's like 50 something things you didn't know you could eat, or probably didn't know you could eat. Pretty good one. So is garlic mustard. I got to ask you, is garlic mustard on this?
it is not. And you bring up all these options. I can tell you deep. I can tell you deep in the foraging. I'm writing all these books down, but that's one of the coolest parts of this experience for me personally thus far, is just expanding my personal knowledge of all this stuff. I didn't realize there were the kaleidoscope options in every direction you look.
Absolutely.
And
in fact,
every time you talk to somebody, you learn more.
There's food all around us. And I was always so curious about how much food is around us. And it was one of those things that every time I was in a tree stand, I'd look around, just kind of start looking at identifying features. Maybe it was the ADD in me. I don't know. Trying to look at leaves on trees and figure out what tree is what and what I'm sitting in. What's growing on that? Is that some type of fungus, or is that, whatever? And that curiosity at some point in my life peaked to the point where I was like, you know what? I have to know.
Yeah.
And now it's grown into this. I'm podcasting, I'm talking to other people, and just trying to learn as much as I can along the way. And it sounds like what you're building is an awesome tool, especially the further it gets built out. So if you ever need a consultant or anything, you just
you're on a short list, man. No, I and just like you kind of needing to know the answer, I'm kind of a year into this journey, and I'm right there with you. I want this. It started as just a hunting season search engine, basically, and now as it's grown into this almanac of local foods, it's really, my gosh, this could turn into something pretty powerful if I build it the right way.
Absolutely. I think it's pretty cool what you've done. I still don't know all the capabilities, but let's kind of talk even more about that. So let's say somebody sets up certain parameters and they have those. You said something like they can pin them or attach them to a dashboard, or does it automatically register to their dashboard that they've been looking at that and using that?
No, that's an interesting thought there. No, you have to manually put it on there, and so you can individually add, or you can add everything that is in that area. And so, for example, if you go hunting in Albemarle, Virginia, you can add individual just deer, and that's fine. And I have family down in Louisiana and family in Tennessee, and so I like to have my dashboard populated with those seasons across those different states for when I might be visiting family. But you can also hit save all, and then every opportunity that fits the hunting of that zone is in your personal dashboard, and you can add and remove as needed.
So let's say you are going on an elk hunt, but you leave the parameters open as far as species, and you've got a certain date and you're in Colorado. Would like trout fishing and stuff like that also pop up if the seasons correlate with the same time frame that you put in?
So are you, well, it's in the database. Fishing is being added. Colorado is in there. But the discover, I think, is what you're asking about. Like, can you just ask that broad question? And I only have that enabled for hunting at the moment. And I'm wondering if I should add it into the other
This is what
three
I'll say
areas as well.
about that whole thing, because I can tell you on numerous occasions that at some point, for sure, I was there and went and getting water, filling up, an Nalgene or something like that from a stream, and you look over and there's shadows that you can see, and they're trout in that stream, and it's a bad day of hunting because you haven't sighted a single elk, but on your license, when you buy that license, you have the ability to fish. And I've always wondered, like, should I have packed in a fly rod with me? Would I have had just as much fun hiking up to this alpine lake or stream and fishing as I would not seeing an elk? You know what I mean? Like, there's always that
Certainly.
possibility there. And it's one of those things that I've always wondered. And so to know whether or not that stream's open or if they're in season or whatever at the time, like, that's a pretty cool feature to have. Just throwing it out there.
No, so I think I think you walked me around to something that is in development, and what you can currently see is very much a minimum viable product. I've done a lot, but I also wanted to make sure this was something that it wasn't a Greek urn where I'm spending all this time on perfecting something that nobody wants. And now that it's been validated, and I'm constantly hearing positive feedback and watching the user count grow. Obviously, this is something to continue pushing, and one of the obvious iterations that are required is, instead of selecting manually, it's just dropping a pin on a map, and that is in development, and that would fulfill everything that you're talking about.
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah,
it might get. I mean, I could see where it would be kind of tough with dropping a pin on a map and identifying certain hunt zones and things like that. But I'm not saying it's not possible, right? It's pretty cool. I'm sure you could figure it out. You built the whole platform, so.
Well, that's one of those things where, as with only the available hours I have to work on it in a day currently, it's one of those. All right, I want to do this thing very well versus doing a lot of things poorly.
Yeah, those day jobs, they should certainly get in the way of all of our aspirations for life, right? To try and make something else happen, but whatever. You just work around it and you keep going on it for sure.
Absolutely.
One of the things I was going to ask you, so is it like all 50 states on there right now currently, or so even Alaska and stuff?
So yes, all 50 are on there. The lower 48 are detailed. Hawaii, lower 48 and Hawaii are detailed, but Hawaii just doesn't have very many opportunities when it comes to hunting. I mean, they do, but it's not.
It's all pay to play.
Yeah, and there's plenty of opportunities. Don't get me wrong, but in terms of hunting license, there's not this wide geographic region that is separated. It's really it's pretty straightforward. But something like Alaska, that's the behemoth I'm tackling this summer, because it's its own country, as you can imagine.
Yeah, that's pretty cool though. That it's going to happen. And make it integrated. Make it integrated to fishing too, hunting and fishing. Because what happens if your hunt's over and you're there and you can't fly out for another day or two? Now you've got time, possibly some king salmon or something. So that's pretty cool. Always. Well,
I think to that end is if you like this, you yourself, but also others listening, if you like the service and can kind of see where it's going, tell some friends. The more people that start using it, the more it frees me up to be able to push in those directions that these ideas that you're bringing up can be fulfilled.
Awesome. So foraging, gardening, is it your standard type garden stuff, or what's kind of in there as far as that entails?
So that kind of gets back to what we were talking about, like constantly learning. I always thought you'd plant in the spring and that's it. And then you build this out and, oh my gosh, there's the spring planting and then late summer for fall harvest on a lot of vegetables. Some things you plant and let them winter. And so it's pretty much, if you can get it at a Lowe's or Home Depot, it's definitely included. I wanted it to be something that everybody could find utility in, but then there's some extra little ones that might be more regional, like Satsuma or something like that.
Satsuma, explain that again. Is that the citrusy fruits? No, wait, that was something.
Yeah.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
And you actually plant those, or is that something you find? Like, is it a wild like thing, or is it something that's domesticated?
It's domesticated, but there are some patches. It's hard to tell if it is one of those things that got away from people a while back, and then all of a sudden you can discover them. But growing up in high school in Louisiana, there'd be a patch or two.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
And let's talk about pawpaws a little bit more. Have you found and discovered patches of pawpaws?
I have. So I was told about them, and then it was my goal. Oh my gosh, there's this fruit that's native to North America, and I've never heard or tasted this. I have to find it. Oh, and the season ends in like 2 weeks. I definitely have to do it. So I basically just dropped everything and went into the woods for 2 weeks. And I tried and tried and tried. And then my wife was like, let me come with you. And of course, instantly she spots them. And so I was very happy that she came along. But we got them on the tail end of the season. They were a little soft for our liking, but I could see how it's that's an interesting flavor. I know you posted something about pawpaw. Have you had them?
So yes, but so have you? I mean, were they still on the tree?
Yes, but it was that time where late in tomato or apple season where there's a few on there, but almost everything is fermenting on the vine or on the ground.
Okay, because I was going to say
like that.
There's a very, very fine line and window for the pawpaws to where overripe is actually the ripe. If you get what I'm saying, before like kind of like a banana. When does it actually taste the best? When it starts getting some brown on it and stuff like that.
Yeah,
is actually when the flavor is there.
Yeah.
So earlier than that, like another example would be like a mango, another tropical fruit, to where it's like it's actually starchy until that starch starts to break down and turn into sugars, and that's when it's the best. And of course, when it ripens on the tree, it's always better than the one you get from the store. And I've got a buddy that grew up in Mexico, and he always tells me, he's like, these mangoes are crap. He's like, the ones you pull from the tree that are ripe on the tree are so much better. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure they are. But where am I going to pull a mango off a tree around here? But
in North Dakota.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, there's so many things like that. But yeah, so did you actually eat any of the fruit then is what I'm
Yes, we ate them. Let's see, what is.
Did you freeze any pulp?
We missed them last year, but that was 2 years ago that we ate them. We had them just straight. I think we had them on bread. Just the different ways we would have a banana, kind of like on a peanut butter banana sandwich, something like that. But only after that season passed did we discover or realize, why didn't we make pawpaw bread? Or we discovered somebody that uses pawpaw for making a mixed drink. Like, we're definitely going to be using those coming up soon.
Yeah.
But they were good. Or what?
Freezing it. And then so like if you have a Vitamix blender, and I do this with bananas too, but you can do it with the pawpaw. So you freeze the pawpaw and you take it out of the freezer, let it thaw just a little bit so it's soft enough so it's not going to break your blender. And you put it in there and blend it because it's still frozen. It's very icy, and it's turns it almost into an ice cream.
Oh, yeah. I can definitely see it turning into a smoothie texture like that.
Yeah.
It was good. We just didn't, we only had, I think, 4 or 5, and each one was so unlike the next. I think we just need to catch them where they're more uniform and we understand what it is versus, is this a good one or is this bad or is this under, or is this over?
So did you save the seeds and cold stratify them? I got to know this. Like, I'm loving it.
We did not.
So save the seeds, put them in some soil, put them in your fridge for like 3 months, and then take them out when it's time. And then by that time, you get them out and you start to where they start to germinate, and then you can plant them and transplant them. And then you do that, and now you've got all these pawpaw seedlings. Well, one, you could be like Johnny Appleseed and make your own pawpaw stands, right? Or patches all over the place.
Yeah.
Or you just put them in your yard, grow them, use them for root stock if it's not that great of a fruit. And then you find one that's a high yield, like a large fruit producing pawpaw, and you graft. Hence the picture you saw on my Instagram story that you do that.
And that completely blew my mind. I think everybody's tried to do a bonsai tree before, and so I have heard of grafting, but that post you put up just blew my mind that you could graft two separate trees like that, or two separate species of.
Well, they're not separate species, so they haven't actually found, and this is only through what I've heard from a permaculturist friend, but they actually haven't found another. So like apples, they have something that's a fast growing rootstock, and they use that so the apple tree actually grows faster. And believe it or not, I don't know if you knew this one, but all apples are grafts of their clones.
I feel like I might have heard something about that, but didn't understand what I was hearing.
Yeah, so they graft all apples, but apparently there's rootstock that they have for apples and stuff like that grow faster, so then it can become a larger tree faster.
Wow.
But as far as pawpaws, I'm pretty sure you need pawpaw rootstock to graft pawpaw to.
That's incredible.
I don't know that much, but what I do know, I'm happy to try and share as long as I'm pretty sure it's right.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah. So what else kind of can people look forward to in the future? As of right now, it is a web platform. Is there anything maybe long-term or kind of plans or visions as far as scaling it to an app or anything like that?
Absolutely. The current design, as I said, is very minimum testing of the idea, but I have an app designed. It's in development. And so that's going to be coming down the road. And then this summer, I am paying attention. I've had so many people ask about Canada, and I'm adding Canadian hunting in this season, and probably adding Canadian planting and foraging and fishing over the winter. And so as of next year, it will be very much a North American almanac for personally sourced food.
Saskatoon berries, that's the only one you got to throw on there. The rest of it doesn't matter.
So, all right, I'm writing it down. You give me a whole
I'm kidding. But anyway, that was just a joke.
No, I'm taking it to heart. I like that. Saskatoon berries.
So other than that, I mean, was there ever an intention to go any further than that, or is it keeping it within like the outdoor realm for the outdoor guy, season report type, almanac for the hunter / outdoorsman?
So that's an excellent question, and it's one of those things that has evolved. At the beginning, I was trying to solve that problem that I and other hunters have, but as I'm building this out and having all these different conversations, I'm starting to realize this actually might be something that can bring different groups together and let them focus on what's really important. And so, obviously there's always threats to wildlife habitat, and for any number of means or any number of reasons. And so I'm finding that it's getting a lot of people from different backgrounds, pro hunting, anti-hunting, together and letting them focus on preserving a habitat. And so I think there's a very natural bridge toward amplifying the number of voices that are speaking out and trying to protect a particular wilderness area. And so I want this to, grow into kind of a dinner table focused education and conservation platform.
That's awesome.
Where you bring people together, literally breaking bread, and you learn and trade skills and information, and really with the goal of preserving this very finite resource that's under threat.
Absolutely. That's awesome. With that being said, Kris, can you kind of tell everybody once again where they can find you or Season Report, where they can find you on all the social media channels so they can follow you and kind of follow updates as this thing grows? And as well as that, how can they actually subscribe and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so seasonreport.com, you can visit the website, get signed up free and easy, or buy the $15 a year membership, and that just gives you full access to everything and saves all your information for that quick access. On Facebook and Instagram, the handle is @myseasonreport. Season Report it's a European fashion blog, and I haven't been able to get that from them yet, but at My Season Report is Facebook and Instagram. And I'm always updating the information on the website. I'm making announcements on social media and partnering with different conservation groups already if you pay attention, I have various promo codes that bring your price down, but then I take a portion of that price. Like if it's Howl for Wildlife is a perfect example where you use the code HOWL, it brings it down $5. And so it's only $10 for the year for you. And then of that 10, I kick 5 back to Howl because they're doing some good work.
Absolutely. That's awesome. I thank you so much for coming on and sharing about Season Report. And like he said, if you want to try and check it out yourself, go sign up and do your free trial. And then after that, hey, buy it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
And use a code and kick it back to conservation.
Yeah. Or even better yet, right? Because that is true. They are doing some great things. And thank you so much for coming on, Kris.
Thank you.
And once again, thank you so much for listening to the Publicly Challenged podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please subscribe on whatever platform it is you're listening to. Also, if you could leave a review, that would help us out. And you can check us out on Instagram or at publiclychallenged.com. And once again, thank you so much for listening to the show.